Today is a very big day, both for me personally as well as in Diablo. You see, today is the day I'm going to hit level 100. I'm level 99 currently in the game. And I thought it would make sense that we save the level 99 for today on live stream, so that way we can kind of enjoy it and hit it together. I think it would be a fun milestone as we wrap up and finish the Druid. But it's also the day that the original YouTube channel has been surpassed here. Check this out by Diablo 4, our new channel. At this stage of the game for YouTube, we have completely dominated any stats I have ever had on any channel. The Twitch is also exploding very quickly. Now, while I've been working very hard for this, I also have some thank yous to apply. For instance, Asmongo has been watching my videos. There's a couple just on the front page here, and one of them, this one here, where he reacted to my review, actually I think got me like another additional 1,000 subscribers, as well as this video hit the front page of trending for gaming. I also noticed I've been getting reactions from Quinn. I've been getting reactions. There was a guy named Tally that watched me too. So shout out to everyone who's watched me, who I recognized and who I didn't recognize, because every little bit has been helping, no doubt. But with that being said, let's get into my level 100 review, or 99, I suppose, review of the Druid and what I've thought on my way to 99. The first thing I will address is the common complaint: the Druid starts slow. This is 100% accurate. The actual moves that you start with feel terrible in the beginning. Whenever people ask me on live stream, and it happens all the time, hey, I'm playing Druid, when does it start feeling good? When do I start smashing? My answer, you know what my answer is? Level 70, because that's right about every single time I've played the Druid. It takes to about level 70 until the character starts feeling good. That's for multiple reasons, but one of them is the fact that it takes a while to be able to get onto the Paragon board. You need the damage from the Paragon board, and more importantly, you even need the Spirit Edition from the Paragon board, because most of our Spirit Edition is going to come from Earthen Might. Now, I have been figuring out other ways to do this. I actually don't like Earthen Might as much as I used to, but almost every build is using Earthen Might just to solve the spirit generation issue. So it takes a long time for people to get both the skill tree level to be able to feel like they can actually cast their abilities, which is where the frustration comes from, as well as the stupid mosquito, as well as a long time to be able to get the damage from things like the Paragon board, etc. So you feel like you're hitting like a wet noodle for basically the first 2/3 of your character. And then by the time you get to the point where you can actually start acquiring damage and you're doing something, now you're at the end game, where the whole portion of the end game is actually just doing the same dungeon over and over and over again to farm experience. You're going and doing all the side quests, etc. So the part where you really wanted the enjoyability, the part where you really needed the enjoyability to have fun with the actual game, not just the grinding portion of it, is very frustrating as Druid. So if you want me to acknowledge right off the bat, is Druid frustrating at the beginning of the game? Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind the Druid is difficult. This stupid mosquito. This Druid is difficult in the beginning. Now, I don't know about you guys, but once I actually got to the late game, the Druids start to feel pretty satisfying. I'm trying to figure out the Storm Wolf type of build, like the one where you throw the tornado around here, and I've got kind of a weird version of it, but it's been working all right for me. And what I found out about this is that there is multiple versions of the Druid that seem good. Every time I'm trying one build, someone's like, have you tried this one? But have you tried this one? Yeah, then most of the time it's a build I literally haven't even heard of yet. And for that reason, I actually think the Druid is, at the end game, pretty fun actually, because there's a lot of different builds and the playstyles are totally different. Like the Storm Wolf Tornado thing, I'm like Palpatine waving my hand around and creating some force magic. And then you have the bear, which I'm like smashing the ground, and there's the satisfaction of the feedback that comes from that, etc. Especially if you're on controller, it rumbles all the goddamn time. So that part is actually pretty good. Okay, so in terms of variety of builds, I actually like that a lot from the Druid. I don't know the other classes in terms of variability. Maybe like the Rogue going from the bow to, you know, the daggers feels as varied. But for me, playing the Druid, it feels like the classes feel very different when I start swapping builds. There is a downside to this, which is that most of the builds actually require you to have uniques, and a lot of these uniques are pretty much mandatory. Like if you don't have, I'm gonna get him one of these times. If you don't have this unique, you don't have the Storm Wolf build. You cannot create a Tornado Werewolf build without this helmet faux stop. And so for that reason, there's an additional level of frustration with the Druid, where I'm seeing other classes like, oh, you don't have the unique? Okay, we'll put in this one, and then we find it's like, no, you don't have the unique, you don't have the build. And a lot of the stats don't cross over. Like overpower damage is pretty cool, and willpower is pretty cool because it gives you skill damage, etc. But like the tornado build isn't exactly an overpower build, where the earth skills definitely are more of an overpower build. So trying to get your items to work, you can see I have 2 sets of complete items. I had to change all my items to get it to work In terms of Paragon board, I feel like there's a pretty decent amount of options, but in reality, there's like 3 or 4 for most builds. You're going to have your spirit. The crowd control basically affects almost everything, so most of the time you're going to take the crowd control one, and then you have kind of a varied slot in there. And as far as the glyphs go, these are varied enough that I don't have any complaints about these. I actually think the fact that our exploit glyph guarantees that we get vulnerable on somebody is actually completely nutty. Also think spirit boons are a really cool addition. I found myself min-maxing these a little bit more in the beginning, where what I was doing is doing like, oh, the overpower one, and then swapping to the heal when I needed the heal, etc. Because you can actually change these during combat. And I do find myself messing with these a little bit, but once you get past kind of level 70-ish region, where you're like, okay, I've got the class figured out, I know what I want to do, you just kind of set and forget about these. So this feels fine until you no longer even care about it. I also believe the class is a little bit pigeonholed to one ability, which is Grizzly Rage. It does seem like for most of the builds, not all of them from what I've heard, but most of the builds are based around Grizzly Rage and this one actual item. The duration of Grizzly Rage is increased. The reason is every time you get a crit strike, you get ramping critical strike damage. And if you have Earthen Might, which guarantees that you will be able to get 100% crit strike for like 5 seconds straight, basically, you can ramp the damage, and the synergy seems obvious with there. I believe it caps at like 1,000% or something. I know there's a cap. I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head, but basically this critical strike damage ramps like almost infinitely, because by the time you're into the ability, you know, a lot of times you're not actually at the cap, etc. But you'll do a lot of damage basically when this ability is up, and then when the ability is not up, you'll feel quite bad, especially when you have like an aspect like mine, which I have 100% spirit cost reduction, meaning my moves are spammable and completely free, as the either werewolf, you know, or when you have Earthen Might with the Werebear, for instance, you can basically spam this stuff going into Grizzly Rage, etc., which just brings more power into Grizzly Rage. So I feel like the Druid, at least the shape-shifting forms, I'm always playing around this ultimate ability for burst potential, which might be the other classes too. I don't know. I really only know my class in detail at the moment. I will play the other ones afterwards here as soon as I hit 100. But for the moment, as it stands, I am a little bit sick of playing around Grizzly Rage, and that does seem to have been the majority of my gameplay on Druid. I also find myself not wanting to run companions at all, and I've seen 0 other people in the wild running companions. I feel like the companions are extremely clunky. The only good one is the AoE Poison Creeper, because it's basically not a companion, it's just a castable. But the Raven has a small little circle that does like, you know, dog shit damage anyway. And then the Wolves are the most clunky animation I've ever seen. They jump, and it looks like someone just dragged an image in Photoshop and moved it on like a curve. It looks absolutely terrible, and half the time it misses anyway. So for me, the companions, maybe this is a giant L take, and maybe I'm wrong. I haven't tried the full companion build, but for me, they look like garbage. And I actually thought the companions were going to be a lot of fun to build around, but I don't even want to bother. Some of the more positive stuff I've noticed is that I do believe that the stash, for instance, or not the stash, but the legendaries that you can get for this character, most of them are usable. There are some unusable ones, and there's some ones that are like Jimro that are cross for everybody, etc. But a lot of these skills are actually quite usable in one build or another, which is a little bit encouraging, because it very often means that when you get a drop, you can use the aspect or extract the aspect if it's a perfect row. So I did find myself enjoying, I mean, I have a pretty good variety of one. I have core skills for Fortify. I've also got Barrier increased damage because I'm using Temerity. I feel like there's enough variability between builds that you do find yourself not being 100% the same as other people's. You know, you have your own kind of like flavor text on it. I still very much believe that cosmetically the Druid looks fantastic. I know there are some debates about, you know, being a big beefy boy. I will leave that to other people, because for me, it doesn't bother me, but I understand the argument. Now, I like making my character look like Jax from League of Legends. That's what I went with, because I played a lot of League of Legends for like 10 years. I think it's fun. But a lot of these outfits are actually really, really cool. I think cosmetically, the Druid is pretty cool. I will say there's one huge problem with this, which is that both these skins, as well as, and this is the part you're going to giggle at, okay, as well as the skins in the shop that you can purchase for God knows too much money, all right, these are completely worthless, because of the reason that every single person is going to have a chest plate, more or less, that makes them a true form, where you're either a werewolf or a werebear. There is some argument that absolute min-maxing, you're not going to use one of these chests, but for the most part, you're going to have a chest plate that makes you either a werebear or a werewolf. Now, why it is really cool, that I'm going to walk out here so you can see, while it is really cool that your hair color of your shapeshift changes based upon your character's hair color. For instance, I'm a ginger, so my bear would be a ginger, and you can see there's some ginger within that werewolf as well, okay? There you go, you can see. See, I'm a little bit ginger as well. I think that's kind of cool. So while that's cool, the reality is you're never going to see your skin. So if you are a druid that spent $25 on a skin you're never going to see, well, that's a good giggle now, isn't it? Overall, though, I think the druid suffers mostly from a mismatching of the demographic it is targeted to and the build style it is played to. It feels to me like a class that is mostly targeted towards people that are just relaxing, trying to fun them with the game, the more average casual audience, people that just like, I want to be a bear, I want to smash the ground, etc. Those seems to be the players that are playing it. Like me, that's exactly the reason I play. I just wanted to have some fun. I thought it looked like a fun class. I wasn't trying to min-max literally anything. I just thought it would be fun. But the problem is, the druid is a min-max class that takes literally every legendary and then takes everything in order to do it, and then you don't get to see your cosmetics anyway. So the target demographic for this should actually be like the hardcore min-maxers, especially because it takes level to like 70 before it actually feels good, and the first bit is brutal. So I think you're seeing extra frustration because the people that should be playing the class are also the ones that play it pretty much the most. You can probably hear my garbage truck in the background. Apologies. So I have found that rather humorous, that it seems to like bait people in that want to play something kind of fun thematically, and then it's like, oh, by the way, this one's the hardest one out of all of them to get rolling. So I do think there is something to be said about that. But overall, once you get the druid build out, it feels really good. The class variety is fantastic. I mean, the pulverized build is like a one-shot AoE build. The storm wolf tornado build seems to be a lot more like new, niche down on singular target type of stuff. The damage seems to be very good. I know there's a lot of memes about the druid damage, but I don't know if you guys have seen some of my damage numbers, but it is very, very high single target damage. Okay, no problems. As I was recording this, I realized, DM, you're in the game. Just show them the damage. Let me go get this boss. Okay, here we go. Let's show a little bit of boss action. Oh, there's another player here. Okay, well, here we go. We'll ramp up the damage, and now go. And then you can kind of see an example of what I'm working with here. I mean, it's not bad. It gets a little bit higher if I get a little bit more time to ramp it, but you can get an example there anyway. So overall, I'm quite enjoying the druid. I just think that a lot of people that start the druid for reasons mentioned might not enjoy the druid, and I think that's where a lot of the negative feedback's coming from. It's definitely more of an in-game class, and I think there's some feedback. I've since changed my opinion slightly. I thought it needs to be slow in the beginning, so it's good at the late, but it honestly doesn't need to be slow in the beginning, because the reality is in the late, in order to ramp every class up, it takes a lot of work, and the way you can min-max how strong the late game is by how much work each class takes to get to the late game. So you don't really need the early game to suffer for it. So I give ground a little bit on that debate. In my personal opinion, the early game druid is a little bit more frustrating than it needs to be. Granted, I think a lot of people are trying to do the shape-shifting stuff right from the beginning, which doesn't really work as well because you need the stuff. So I think if people were just using like tornado to level or something like that, it would actually be a little bit less frustrating in the beginning because the casting skills are better typically than the shape-shifting ones, at least till later. So I think a lot of people are starting, like pulverized build, like level 1, like I did, for instance, and getting frustrated. I will say this, even though it is frustrating, I am glad I actually did start with my pulverized build level 1, because by the time I got to the level in which the pulverized build worked, I understood why it worked, and I understood what I needed to make it better. Like, I realized by the time I got there, spear generation is an issue, survivability is an issue. Like, I started to realize, okay, I've been suffering here, here, and here, so I was able to put the Lego pieces kind of together in order to build it, if that makes sense. Whereas if I hadn't done that from the beginning, my knowledge of that would just be less, but also my experience getting there was basically miserable. So my opinion on the druid is, it is very fun once you have everything. It is fairly frustrating until you get there, and most of the feedback on druid so far has been fair. That's just my personal feedback, however. The video is now over except for a couple plugs. Again, I am on the live stream here, and we have been growing insanely. We're at almost 40,000 followers. People are following like crazy. People are buying the horse from me while I'm live, etc. I appreciate all of the support. I also want to address how many subscribers we've gotten in YouTube. I'm going to thank you guys again for this. This is insane. It's been an absolute come up of a week. Basically are changing my life this month. I'm just going to be flat honest with you guys. You're basically changing my entire life at the moment if we continue on this trajectory. So I'm going to continue to do my best to improve the quality of my product for you. Don't want to drag the video out, so have a great day.